for the last 9 weeks, is it week 10, we've been having these evening discussions and talks. Today, usually every Thursday it's been, and today is another one of those days. So we've also created this session, how can we make cities wilder, on the theme of today. And it's awesome that we can be here in the same space rather than everything before was online. And so briefly, because we're also online, we will basically have also a chat function for those of you online. So any questions, please raise them there. We have somebody here live, Raul, who will manage the chat, but also if there's any questions for the speakers, he can read them out if you don't want to unmute as well. But we're asking you to be muted over there. So ACAN is a voluntary organization. And it's not just for architects, it's actually for people who are involved in the built environment. It started in the United Kingdom. Some of my ex-students from quite some time ago are part of founding it and very active in it. And that's how it also came about to be founded here. They now also have activist networks in Nigeria, for example, in Germany, in France, in Spain, Portugal, and other countries as well. So do check us out and always volunteer if you want to get involved. But with no further delay, I would like to just announce the brief program. So we got Professor Juho Rahaniemi. I hope I did not get that pronunciation too bad. Okay, it could have been something rude. Okay, I'm not going to ask. So I probably need a stiff drink before I dare to ask what that might be. My colleague at Tampere University, and we'll talk about why greener cities and findings from ADEL projects. Then we've got Laura. I'm too scared now to introduce her. Also from Tampere University, and she will talk about the life cycle of urban trees and microclimate supporting biodiversity. And then Nina will talk about negotiating more than human urban spaces. What we'll do is we will have talks of about 25-30 minutes, I think, remind me if that's correct, yes? And then we will take questions from the audience, and then we'll have the next speaker as well. And then we hopefully still have time for final discussion as well. But without further delay, I'd like to introduce my colleague Juho. He's Professor of Urban Planning and Vice Dean for Education at the Faculty of Built Environment at Tampere University. He's dedicated his work to the problematics in the Finnish planning system. He's equally interested in the health issues related to urban planning and design. Moreover, he's involved in multidisciplinary communities such as Tampere Urban Research Network for Sustainability, some of you might know it as TURNS, and the Association for Literary Urban Studies, ALUS. During his earlier career as an architect and urban planner, he has actually compiled over 70 urban plans and over 50 architectural projects. So Juho, please welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, I'm very pleased to be here. So in this late afternoon, and I appreciate this space. It somehow collects us together here, quite near each other. So let's see if we can. Okay.
There you go.
It works.
Yeah, and that's just to move the slides.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So my topic is why greener cities, and I'm talking this from a particular view, so from the human health point of view. So of course, greener cities, green city, it means something, many other things as well, like flora and fauna and enjoying the life, urban life, social and economic things, and so on. But I'm talking about human health, and it's a bit limited vision for this, but it's also very important thing, of course, for us humans. So I will talk about autoimmune diseases very broadly, maybe because I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, but I have learned just a little bit during these few years I've been involved in this ADELE projects. There are actually two projects, ADELE and then ADELE 2, and yeah, more about that later. And I'm concentrating in the research that and articles that I have been involved, and also a couple of articles that the other researcher in Adela Group has been writing and doing during these past years. So trends in Finland, and not any good trends. So you see here a couple of diseases like type 1 diabetes, celiac disease, asthma, and allergic rhinitis. And you see that this has been close to zero, like asthma and allergic rhinitis in the late 60s. And it has been coming up all the time, and this only shows for the 2000 or so, but also 20 years after that. So it has been mainly continuing raising like that. And it has been calculated that about 20% of the population in Western countries and developed countries, so they have been suffering from symptoms of asthma and atopy and allergies and other immune-mediated diseases. And almost 40% of children have some kind of problems with these diseases. And it's a huge, really huge thing in our society. And it's one of the maybe the most alarming things that is happening. If it continues to raise, so soon almost everybody will have some kind of diseases, immune-mediated diseases. So the fundamental problem here is the imbalance between the immune activation and control and these diseases. So we don't get enough this immune activation in our life. And this is also very expensive in Finland alone. So, and just if we calculate the direct and indirect costs of allergy and asthma, so it's between 1.5 and 2 billion euros in a year in Finland. So, what is happening near Finland in Russian Karelia? There is a comparison with 4 immune diseases, and as you can see, so in Finland there are about 4 or 5 times more of these diseases, and because the populations are genetically quite close to each other, so it has to be something else. Of course, you could assume that it's because of the healthcare system we have. Of course, we have different healthcare systems, and maybe in Finland there will be more diagnosis for these diseases. But the gap between these two countries is so big that it must be something else as well. It must be something in our lifestyle or in our environment or both. And these problems are well acknowledged in all over the world, and there are 3 leading hypotheses where these differences between different countries are coming from. So one is chemicalization. It is said that there are millions and billions of chemicals, and that the combination of the chemicals there are maybe trillions, and we don't know what they all do to our bodies, and then it's a very severe thing. It may be one of the reason for this development. Also, it is claimed that we wash ourselves too much. We have too good hygiene, and this is and we don't get the normal microbiota that is out there in the nature. And what we have been studying is this biodiversity hypothesis, and it is said that we don't have enough nature in our urban areas where we live in, and these are of course linked to each other. Even if we get some good microbiota from outside and we come home and we wash our hands, so there is not that anymore. So these hygiene hypotheses and biodiversity hypotheses are interconnected. At the same time, when these diseases have been increasing, the population in urban areas has been increasing. And humans and the microbiota living in their bodies, they have been evolving for thousands and millions of years together, and they have kind of a symbiosis. And in urban areas, you don't meet this microbiota anymore as you used to meet when we were living in the agricultural or natural conditions. And these modern living conditions, so it really can be difficult to receive the right kind of exposure for natural microbes that are, of course, beneficial for our health. So this is the root problem, and it causes allergies and so on. So this is the background why we have been done what we have been doing for the past few years. So from the early 2015, I've been part of this ADELE and then other two research groups, and it is a cooperation between University of Helsinki and Tampere University, and there have been it's really multidisciplinary co-working. From University of Helsinki, there has been environmental ecology people and also some people from sociology, and then from Faculty of Medicine. So at Tampere University, there are immunologists, virologists, microbiologists, and then our part has been at the Faculty of Built Environment to do this urban planning and design and GIS analysis. And the main idea here in these two research projects has been rather than concentrating on the treatment of these symptoms of these diseases, we have been focusing on the prevention of these diseases. So we have been trying to find ways to develop a balanced immune system. We are different adequate exposure to microbes. And of course, as it is funded by Business Finland, so there has been partnering companies and scientific collaborators all around the world. And then we have been writing articles. There have been 3 patents so far and some products coming up already. So what we have been done in my group, so it's mainly this GIS, and we have been using Corin land cover data that is openly available for all European countries except Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. And in Finland, this is it's the whole Finland, 20 times 20 meters, and that's what we have been mainly using. And you can also have these reference years starting from 1990 and many updates. And there are 44 different land cover classes. This is not anything to do about land use planning as such, but this is an actual land cover that satellites and satellite pictures have been taking pictures of. And then we have this kind of data from children who has genetical prevalence to have diabetes 1, and there has been 13,000 children, and I think we have been using about 5,000 children in our research, and each children has this kind of we know where they have been living for the first year, and then we have taken different radiuses and then seen what kind of a land cover is there where they live in their first year. And then we have also have some adults, maybe 800 of them. So let's go to the research articles. So This is actually the first time in the world that we were able to show that microbiota outdoors also comes indoors. And we also marked that in urban sites you don't have that many species of microbiome, and not so much. The quantity is also smaller than in the agricultural sites, rural sites. And how we did this? So we had to develop a new method to find it out. So this is kind of a doormat, kynnysmatto. So this was inside of every apartment, and it was standard size how many times when you come in, so how many times you do this, and it was also standard size how you collect it, and then the actual researcher went to the homes and took it away, the dirt that is in this doormats, and then they were frozen and they were sent to the Kansas, USA, and then then we got this. Okay, part of them went to the Meilahti in Helsinki, but quite a substantial part went to the Kansas. And we had also the stool and saliva and skin samples from the people living in these apartments, and they were also frozen and sent to the Kansas. And another research which was done with these samples. So we were able to show that in agricultural areas the microbiota was different, and we marked that the month or the month of the year and the microbial diversity in the garden and house animals, they all had some effect on microbiome inside. And we had 2 weeks of these doormats in June, 2 weeks in August, and 2 weeks in February. And in February there was, it's no wonder, but there was less environmental microbes than human microbes, because of the snow, of course, and during summer there was more microbes that were beneficial for humans, especially on rural areas. And you have to remark that the bacteria minimum on rural areas, so it was bigger than the bacteria maximum on urban areas, and it's quite big, the difference. And surprisingly, the importance of vegetation was bigger in February, and it you could think that the vegetation is they have the leaves and everything on the summertime, but maybe this is also because of the snow, because then the soil microbes couldn't come to the inside, and even if there were some vegetation like spruce or pines or trees like that, so there was it was bigger in portion than in February. Okay, and then house animals, we remarked that they improved bacteroids and acinobacteria that are beneficial to our health. And one thing that it just came out is in diabetes care. So we remarked that if you are living in a rural area as a child in your first year, so it postpones when you are having the diabetes 1, if you are having. So that was quite clear, and every year that it postpones, it gives you more healthy years when you are old, basically. So it's quite important. Yeah, in that particular research there, we had 5,000 children. So what we are doing just now, so there is this thing called Biomass Atlas in Finland, and this is in Finland alone, so it's very unique in the world. And I've heard that they are doing something similar in Baltic countries, but this is open information, and you can go to the website and see what kind of things you can find out from here. So it's actually done in 20 times 20 meters, and this is it used to be available, and I think it still is. But there, in any case, from Natural Resources Finland that is maintaining this database, so you could basically have this kind of information about dozens of different plants. But there is maybe one weak point in this kind of research. So you can say that there is a correlation. Yes, there's also a correlation between worldwide non-commercial space launches and sociology doctoral awarded in US. And there's correlation between divorce rate in Maine and consumption of margarine per capita in US. Okay, so correlation doesn't necessarily imply causation. You all know this, but it's worth to remember every now and then that there can be, if you see that there's a correlation between two things, so there can be third or fourth thing that is behind everything, and they don't actually correlate with each other, but something else. So what to do then? The answer for us has been intervention research. And I have two researchers of these. So one has been published already in 2018 in Future Microbiology. And the thing was that there was this kind of a soil, and it was handled in a way that all the pathogens were removed of the soil and things like that. And then there was 14 people trying this, 7 doing this, and 7 using placebo soil, to say. So there was nothing special in there. And there was nurse visits, as you see, and this is this before after research. And then they take stool and skin samples. The skin samples were taken from here, as you see the red area there. And the people washed their hands a couple of times in a day, and they just then put under the water, but they didn't use any soap or like this. And even just 2 weeks of exposure for forest soil microbes, so it can improve ACD dwellers microbiota diversity. And this is quite interesting, just 2 weeks. And of course, there is now patent for this kind of thing. And in the best case scenario, you could have a new toothpaste, so everybody could use this. And so let's see what happens. Now there is I just heard today that there is a new article coming with 50 persons, and it's to be published, and they said that there are even clearer results that we had with 14 people. So, and now maybe the research that I'm most proud of, and it's been done with daycare children, and it's also an intervention research. So we have this starting point that I've been discussing all the time. So exposure of microbes, they help our body's natural immune system to develop and working. There's 5 minutes. Okay, yeah, that's enough. Yeah. And then we had a hypothesis that green daycare culture offers diverse and safe exposure for natural microbes, and hence improves human immune system's activity and regulation. And there are some research questions. So is it possible to do this kind of changes in daycare courtyard? And how it affects if we do the changes with the children's activity, relationships, and the nature of experienced well-being, so kind of a social thing. And then how it affects the microbiota, kind of a medical thing. We had 15 daycare centers in Espoo, Lahti, and Tampere. 6 of them were these kind of urban daycare centers where changings were done. And there was 3 nature daycare centers as reference, and then 6 urban daycare centers as reference that we compare with these 6 intervention urban daycare centers. Totally about 100 children, and this was a 1 month research period, and then a follow-up in Espoo and Lahti. And one article that came first, by the way, there is a drawing from one of the children after playing in these courtyards. So this is all experienced, so positive effects to mood, motivation, energy, and beneficial effects to learning and concentration. This is reported by the parents and the teachers at the kindergarten. And better experienced outdoor air quality and stronger nature relationship. Sorry, wrong. More active play, more creative play without toys, and more touching with natural elements, and more information about nature. There were some problems in durability of the forest soil, so the children really use it daily and day in, day out, and then it was kind of a problem. But even if it kind of went away, the microbiota still remained in this soil. Costs were very low compared to the results, and there were some recommendations given, and there were also some of the researchers visited some cities to propagate this kind of a thing, that it's really beneficial. And then there was one article in Science Advances, and we actually could show that the richness of the actinobacteria and the diversity of the proteobacteria became bigger after intervention. So it means that and the children in nature daycare centers and urban intervention daycare centers, they have the same kind of changes in their commensal microbiome, but not in the reference urban daycare centers where no changes were made. And actually this microbiota of these children became a bit similar than the people in Russian Karelia. And and our hypothesis was that the green daycare center, green daycare courtyard offers diverse and safe exposure for natural microbes and improves human immune system activity and regulation, and we proved it to be correct. And it was also published in about 30 media in Finland, and also in Wired Net magazine and in The Guardian. So this is the last slide. Even if our ADEL projects are now coming to end, we actually had this morning the last researcher meeting, but we still have this evening the first researcher meeting about this VIVE, that is a new multidisciplinary research project funded by Academy of Finland. This is strategic council money. And what is important, so we will continue these interventions, doing this more and more, and it's better because it's about the causation, not just a correlation. So I'm really waiting for this, and Laura is with us in that project, and this is the park from Pietarsaari where I live. So thank you.
So we have time for questions now. Just checking as well online if there's any questions or comments, but otherwise, of course, opening it up to the live audience.
Not yet, we don't have
Not
yet comment.
Okay. Nina.
Yeah, thanks. Very interesting presentation.
I wanted to ask a question because when I heard years ago these results, the strong results for this biodiversity hypothesis, I was being hopeful. I thought now we will finally wake up because it has such a strong effect on health and kids and expensive diseases and whatnot. And but then when I somehow saw the results, I was a bit disappointed. But I'm interested to hear what do you think about it, because I thought maybe now we will have a better connection to nature. But now it seems that we are stripping the soil from the forest and bring it to the daycare yards and destroying where we're taking it from. And now there's like micro products in cosmetics and clothes. So to me, that doesn't seem the kind of effect that I was expecting. But I don't know, how do you feel more hopeful about that?
Yeah, from the point of human health, so I think there will be improvements in those, and also how we feel in our cities. So it's something. If we greener our cities, so it will be also beneficial for our, so to say, mental health or our being as a whole. But yeah, but for the larger picture, the whole flora and fauna in the world, so maybe not that much, but for the human health, yes.
And maybe if I can perhaps hook into that as well, is that, and of course, for those of you just joining in the evening, then you wouldn't have heard the earlier discussion, but earlier on you were actually referring to having these pocket parks and parts of forest, and everybody's always near greenery. Then you wouldn't necessarily need to bring in the soil, but then it's more that notion that I think Ilona was earlier referring to, rather than integrating greenery into the city, is it actually really the city into the green?
Yeah.
And I think, because this is of course for experiments, you have to obviously transfer the forest in to be able to really control for the variables. But over a bigger scheme, I think it's a very valid point of what we could learn from it could be actually ideally would be more like the pattern you were referring to on the wall, like the green space that is near everything, and that we have very easy access to it, rather than we're starting to sort of bring it in artificially.
Yeah. And I have to say that if I still had children who were in the daycare, so I would surely put them in the natural daycare or the daycare with green courtyard. So that for sure. So yeah, I'm convinced on that.
Yeah. Just checking if there's more questions and how much time we have. Please.
Thank you for your interesting presentation. I was thinking, when you are speaking about the biodiversity, but how about biodiversity in the sense of nature conservation, about the rare and threatened species and rare and threatened biotypes or habitats of those species? Yeah. Is it enough if we have lots of common species in our environments, or do you have thinking about that, or is it there some contribution about the rare, or how many species you have to have?
Yeah, I was also speaking about microbiome species like bacteria and so. But I think the more you have species, either microbiota or plant species, so the better. Of course, more species you have, like in plants, so there will be different kinds of microbiome as well. So they are like helping each other. So it's yeah. So I think the days of the monoculture in our parks and the green areas, they are gone now, and we have to really think about this biodiversity from different angles. So maybe I answered to you already, or
yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Dalia?
Hi, Juho. First, I was so happy when you said this correlation joke. Anyways, but and going back to this, we've known many things for many years and nothing happens. And I was just wondering, Juho, with you and your research, how do you reach out? How does it not stay amongst you, your group, and this academic? Of course, you brought out the articles in the Guardian and so forth. But for example, do you see that there is a more activist role from your side, or that you could also engage more with politicians and so forth?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a very important one. So we can do as many research as we want, but if nobody is listening or reading them, so what? Nothing is changing, except maybe we have better CVs, but that's nothing. So yeah, so you have to reach the media, and it's very very important, and through the media, different kinds of media, so you can reach the people. And as I said, so this one particular research in Science Advances, so it was really in the header of the Helsingin Sanomat and in the main news in Finland, and in Wired magazine and so on. So I think this was read by thousands of people, or tens of thousands, or even more. So that's very important. But we also had some researchers that were working together with Häme University of Applied Sciences, and they were visiting different cities in Finland. And as I said, so they tried to tell that this is something you should do, because it only takes like 4,000 or 5,000 euros per courtyard, and you have so wonderful results. So that's what you should do. And I think there are some daycares that have already changed their courtyards because of that. But it's very important we talk in public what we have found.
Okay, thank you so much. No further questions, I think, but please, thank you, Juho again. Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to now welcome Laura. By the way, all our speakers this afternoon are actually from Tampere University. That's not because we were desperate, but because actually when we're looking at this topic, we realized that we have actually some of the experts right in our university. And actually all of the ACAN talks have usually been a mix of an international speaker and a Finnish speaker. Last week we sinned with 2 international speakers. Today we're sinning against our rule again, because we felt that the people with the best expertise, you could just now hear from Juho and Laura now coming up as well, are actually right here with us. And so we're very lucky to have everybody here today. And so I'd like to introduce you now, Laura. You're a postdoc researcher in the Changing Concept of Neighborhood Unit in a Densifying City project at the Tampere School of Architecture. From January, she will start working as a postdoc researcher in the Biodiversity Interventions for Wellbeing, the BIWE project that Juho briefly talked about, and which is funded by the Academy of Finland. Laura has a multidisciplinary background. It's actually super interesting because you trained as an architect, and then you've also been working with biodiversity-oriented landscape planning, public art, and management of continuous and lifelong learning in urban planning pilots. And you've also published a textbook, although unfortunately in Finnish, on biodiversity in urban planning. So please warmly welcome Laura.
Okay, yeah. All right, thanks a lot, Sophie, and you all. It's been a long day, so I'm happy to take you to a visual journey to the surroundings of Tampere, and at the same time, I try to awake you with some thoughts of life cycle of urban trees and microclimate supporting biodiversity. So, there are 3 very common levels. We have heard a lot of genetic and species and ecosystem levels of biodiversity, but I would like to add cultural and climatic levels to this concept. Because we talking about species, we still are human beings, and all what we do are related to our cultures. also the diversity of them, and the nature, all the myths, stories, narratives are involved in our thinking, back to the centuries and thousands of years building cities. We have been hearing today a lot of why biodiversity is weakened, but for a moment I'd like that we should stop to think it over again. Of course, the growing impact of human beings. We replace the soil. We just heard about the importance when we build cities, because I come from the built environment department. So in that sense, my perspective thinks of changing cities. We still pollute air, water, and vegetation a lot with our functions. And we use rock bed. That is quite seldomly thought over, but it's something material resources we won't get more. And doing all of this, we are taking place for human beings and at the same time limited areas for other species other than human. But what is growing? The population. And I think this is one of the basic problems on the earth. There are too many of us. The globe cannot handle it anymore. Or are we clever enough to invent something? But then to the climate things. So we are here in the north at a subarctic climate. So this is our perspective. We have many, many things very well here, not too warm in yet. Like we just came outside, it's really cool. But somewhere else, it's already making life very difficult, too dry, too warm. And we have maybe too humid, too cold. This is a couple of days from now, the average temperature in Finland. So it was between -2 Celsius until, was it 5 or 6 degrees. So the material resources, they have a major role in our climate, locally, regionally, nationally. So we have to take care of also the soil and rock bed, because those are the things that we cannot change, and they are the major ingredients and materials that keep us alive here. Also the rock bed with the minerals mixed to the soil with organic materials. And that's why I'm showing you these pictures, that when thinking of green today, I would like to also look beyond the surface of Earth and also upwards to the air. Think holistic. The urban trees I promised to talk about, we have to think all of the trees of the city. And I believe that also the trees on the borderlines of the cities, they are also urban. They belong to the safety net of the green networks and corridors, keeping our cities alive, the biodiversity of the cities. And in that sense, I'm following the previous talkers today, that I think we have to understand that cities are into nature, not the other way around. And somebody asked about the conservation areas. Those are maybe the most important parts of the cities. And to the question of rewilding today, I think that in Finland, where the density is low and we have a lot of trees in the cities, the major issue is that how we keep those. It's not about what we do more or plant more trees, but how we keep these existing green biotopes and masses.
Switched off.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Because they are important for all the animals, all the species, plants, everybody who are connected to each other. Then a couple of slides are similar as you had earlier. So lots of with corridors and green areas have been done. And the questions are not only global, but also national, international, and the borderlines between countries shouldn't do harm to these corridors. In Finland, we have to also think the Northern Hemisphere and the collaboration between also the Russia and the Norway. But then we go to the walk to the city at Tampere, because actually I wanted to talk you or awake you to look close. I believe that this time of the day you have already information enough, and I want to believe that as experiencing environments, we could learn, observe what is near, something that we maybe close our eyes in everyday life, because the nature is brilliant. Take a berry of a yew and think of the seeds inside the berry. The whole biodiversity of the one family of trees is there in so small, brilliant package. If we think of the technology and humankind, we are still far behind. We must learn from the nature. And every tree, every species, they have their own fine strategies to generate and deliver the genes to the next generation. We must think of the conifer trees here up north, which are very delicate. Take a cone into your hands. I think it's much more finer device than a mobile phone, if we look back to the history and into the future. And the trees in the city, all the urban trees, they are often older than ourselves. They are older than our buildings, at least in Finland, where the building structures are quite young. So it really matters how we take care of the trees when we build something new. I believe, as an architect, that many trees are more important than the buildings. And it was a hard lesson. I made some studies of field biology some years ago and noticed how little I know. And that's why I want to all of you awake to experience the nature and learn more. There's the cone again, in the end of its life cycle. The seeds are gone, and now the mushrooms takes over. My perspective is from Finland, and our cities are still quite low density, and the building heights are low. They are in the scale of the trees, and I believe that that's kind of also human scale of our nature. It's easy to live there, and this is my home yard actually. Pyykki Square Market, and you see the rocks on the market surface. They are natural, rounded by the ice age 10,000 years ago. And actually this old marketplace, I think the rocks were put there after the war times in 40s. This works very well as a stormwater place. There's hardly any water floating there. So we have also traditional ways of doing very well with the waters, with the green areas. Here's the yew right next to our house, where the berry was from. This is a playground for the children of our house. Every time I come home, there's some happy noises from the tree. I can't see the kids, but they are climbing there. And I believe the building, it's a music school for the youth. It was built up, I believe, in 60s, so you can count the age of this tree. Some lilacs, white ones. We have very delicate ways to use in urban design plants, take care of them. So the cultural values matters also. If there's delight and aesthetics, we accept the trees much more. And thinking of the microclimate, we shouldn't forget the light. Without sunlight, we don't have any life. And here up north, the light comes very low. At the summertime, a huge amount of it. And like now in November, hardly, not at all. And from these pictures, you can remember the shadows of light and also the scale of the trees. There's some oaks, which are at the size of the block of flats. We heard today earlier about the ecosystem services, and also with trees, there are counted several ones. And even we can be critical to the concept of ecosystem services. I think it's a good tool, thinking from the different perspectives, what all kind of benefits we can have from trees. There could be even much more, but this is a birch, and I think the Finnish is famous of the chewing gum, which have this axonal health issues for our dental health. Thinking of urban planning and design, the ecosystem services are nowadays planned, and there are a lot of guidelines, agreements, introduction. And I think the good point of these ecosystem service guidelines is that it links together the people who can do and plan with the green things and who can do the urban planning. I'm not sure if they are very delicate to the nature yet, but the way is right. We cannot forget the influence to the winds. We all know that extreme weather conditions will increase. So we could do much more with the green areas in the cities, help make it as nice as possible, with using all kind of monitoring and planning devices and programs. Today, listening all of the lectures and talks, I started to think about a green level of information. And these guidelines and databases of trees in the cities might be one, because they are open and they tell citizens and inhabitants why the trees are important. How do we take care of them? Even some countries give names for the trees. I remember that in Australia, there were cities that you can write emails to the trees or adopt them as monuments for the society or even private ones. We have a lot of technical solutions to plant trees and take care of them in the cities. But yet we need the monitoring and information and research. Are this enough? The legislation and guidelines go to the different kind of parts of the city in urban planning, and they are already climate-wise principles in use. But as we heard today, we must be also critical and think of the whole ecosystems, follow them, ask people how they are, how they feel, and are they well in use. There are a couple of a bit old news from the papers about the prices of city trees. This is perhaps one of the reasons that we could use in saving trees, because it's thousands of euros every single tree when you plant it, and they will never catch up the trees that they are already there. And thinking of this green information level in the city, also the rewilding and replanting, taking care of the parks is an important information and media thing in the cities for the citizens. It can be brought to the urban space, to the parks, but more importance to the layers of media. So the parks and green areas are in the process all the time. We can help some species. Last summer was quite hot, thinking of the Finnish level, and bringing water to the cities. I saw several birds, and not only dogs, drinking from the water basins in the park. We must look up to the sky. Many species have ways to move through the city. And also think of the suburban trees. And it was mentioned already today earlier that we have this tradition from the 60s and 70s of the suburban planning, where the constructors were asked to pay a fee if they put the tree down. And that's why the trees in the suburban areas are older than the buildings. This is from next to Tampere-talo Park. And there you can see that there's a young tree planted next to the old one. So the constant change and rewilding happens also inside the parks. But most important, I think that we should save the patches of the almost untouched wood patches in the cities, which we have a lot in Finland. Because from these pictures, you'll see the scale of the natural trees. There's myself standing there in a green box. And those are just on the other side of Pyhäjärvi, on the Pirkkala side. And then we can see the trees planted into the box. They won't survive long. Or the apple tree in the allotment garden. If you plant an apple tree, you have to wait several years, almost 10, to have a first apple. So the life cycle and timeline of trees, even in Finland, we don't have that old trees. This is one of the oldest from Heinola Urban National Park. And you can believe that the tree have seen a lot. Then back to my home site. There's this pine, I can see it from our kitchen window. And it's a funny thing, we moved from a smaller town, from a field, where from the window I saw only the apple trees I've planted. And now I have a tree view in the city, which the trees are older than our house, which is almost 100 years old. And when the tree fell down, it will continue several decades, even more, and delivering a life further. So one thing I want to give you as a gift, it's a new aesthetic in the cities, the aesthetics of the dead wood, which we can find from the Pyynikki Ridge conservation area inside the city. We are used to that kind of use there, but what if they would be part of the cities, also in the urban squares? There's a small tree just planted, also next to our place. I think it's very lonely. It misses family, relatives, the other trees. And the parks are not only for trees or people, they are for the animal and the other species other than human species. And there's also a circle of life going on all the time. We must not forget mushrooms, fungi, which are important partners of the trees' well-being. And not the tiny insects and animals helping the wood continue its life. We have several ways to enjoy these parks, and one of the important enjoying trees is to use our legs, bike, walk into the parks and leave the car home or get rid of it. In Finland, green is not green. Half of the year is very dark, it's black, and the trees are not always delivering these benefits. They are sleeping, they are tired of the for the winter time. They fell asleep until the light comes. One solution is multiple different species of trees. And it's often introduced that we should now plant some parks using more species or wooden alleys. But inside the cities, we have cemeteries, church parks, which already have tested this multiple tree families for decades, even centuries. And now, in the end, I wish that we will have some snow, reflecting the warmth up to the skies. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Laura. Don't disappear. I'm sure there's questions. So again, checking in if there's any comments or questions online or otherwise from the space here.
No, we don't have online yet. And I'm asking people online that please write your question in the chat or raise your hand and you can ask to the speaker, please.
Any questions here in the audience? Perhaps if I may ask, and actually I'm surprised Dalia is not asking that question because it's actually the same question also to Juho that she asked, which is how do you actually, because I think you speak really beautifully about these different aspects and in a way almost for me everyday experiences that we often don't think about and reflect on. How do we actually make, how do you share that with other people in the city? That we can actually start to pay more attention, that we can actually get the message out there, how important that this is.
That's a tricky one, yeah. I took the one other than human creature to the Pyynikki just before coming here, and I was thinking of the thing you asked.
Your dog.
Yes, and a very old one. So I was thinking that, and I was happy to come here because I suppose that we need each other. We're living in a very independent, single world, doing our things as an individuals, and learning some new ways to consume, to do little things in everyday life. I think that we need support each other to change our ways. Like you had the headline and everything has to change, and that is true. And I feel guilty drinking coffee. I see the trees falling down, and still I do it. But how I'll stop it? I tried a couple of times. But I think we should do some little things collective. We cannot change our lives in a second, but with few steps and believing to the future and believing that every single little thing counts. I'm really happy to be here with all of you, and happy of our young students are interested of the issues, because I think there's a light in a tunnel, hopefully, to gain new styles of life. And as designers and planners, I think that we have to put all our strength into that we make it as easy as possible to people. Nobody don't want to have a harsh life. So make the cycling and working with soil and clay and plants easy as possible, and make it accessible to all the citizens, also those ones who cannot move them by themselves, to the elderly people and kids especially, that who are related to our the generation then can do whatever almost they can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
that kind of things.
Yeah. Because maybe if there's no other question, we heard earlier today from people who have worked or are still city gardeners as well about the fact funding and that things cost money to maintain. What's interesting is also when you say, well, and this is something that's happened actually in the UK on a massive scale, whereby people have been basically the city has handed out the contract from road maintenance and tree maintenance to private contractors. With the idea to save money. Then what actually happens is that they start cutting down beautiful mature trees that are older than people's homes, have a huge biodiversity value, visual amenity, and so on. And instead, we're then planting these very small trees. But of course, what was very interesting, you said, but the cost of a tree also costs money. There's also huge failure, my understanding of them. So how can we change the narrative around this and the value that we also earlier today talked about, that the value shouldn't just be about the euros. We heard about health and the values that way, but how could we, or are you doing any work around this as well, speaking with people in the city? And how could we, maybe this is a broader question or more comment and something for Laura. You have 2 seconds to answer that.
Yeah.
Okay, no immediate response. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm sort of course, trying to connect, and I know you missed some of that discussion when you were on your way here. I think and Juho might want to answer, and then I think we have also one question online, but please, Juho.
Yeah, I don't have an answer. I have a question. So you said quite interestingly that you propose a new aesthetic for our green areas. So I was thinking that is this connected somehow to our ethics? So aesthetics and ethics, and is there something wrong in our aesthetics?
Maybe not. I can maybe answer only for myself, but as an architect and dealing with the landscape architecture too. So I used to think of the several wooded patches that would be really lovely if we just clean a bit. And after done some field biology studies, I started to saw differently. I saw the bushes and there must be some nests, or well, the old tree, there must be some bats, and can you hear the birds singing and which species they are and things like that. So in that sense, I think that there's some aesthetics. We could, for example, take the tourism or the pages from the cities, what we show and what kind of nature belongs to where. Like there's very clean and neat parks in the middle of the cities, and maybe other kinds on the borderlines, and so that kind of thinking. And already I think it's going on. There's a lot of parks having these dead wood pieces there and there, and that kind of things that we are learning. And many people are asking why they have left those trunks there. Or some people still think that the little insects or mushrooms don't belong to the parks, but they could.
But it's that notion as well, when you talked about, it's very dynamic, it's continuous changing the park. And then if we actually allow it to happen, support that, we should actually think of not sanitizing it so much. And then that creates different aesthetics. If I can maybe move to the online, I don't know if the person, there's one more question I think we can take.
Yes, we have a question.
If you want to read it out, or if they want to unmute.
From Mina. The question is, how do you like to see trees in the city? Is there a best way to introduce them? Because she also mentioned that someone once called trees planted along the street imprisoned streets. So how do you, this is the question, how do you like to see trees in the city?
I would like to see as much trees in the city as possible. So multiple species, different ages, and I would like to see trees as groups and mimic the natural wood areas. That would be lovely. But I also admire old parks and the aesthetics of them. So I think diverse trees would be the best thing to have.
And I gather also not cutting them down in the way that we've been doing.
No,
Yeah.
but also leaving when they are old enough or dangerous. So I wouldn't take the trunks off. Find a solution and use them several ways.
Thank you so much
Thanks
as
a lot.
well. So an applause again for Laura.
Thanks.
So, last speaker of the day. Well done for those of you that are still standing, particularly also co-host of our Green City Symposium, Nina. This is what you expected to look.
Yes.
So I now have the honor to actually introduce Nina, who has been very much part of organizing today as well, co-chairing it, and she's still standing, has loads of energy to give a talk today to finish the event. So Nina is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Tampere as well, and also STUE, so the Sustainable Transformations of Urban Environments profiling platform. She's been doing research and teaching environmental policy, specializing in conservation policy and collaborative methods. At the moment, she's involved in 2 multidisciplinary projects, the Offsetting Game, where she has co-designed a tabletop game about biodiversity offsetting, and also Helsinki Urban Rats, where she's studying urban rat management. So a very warm welcome to our co-chair and final speaker of the day, Nina. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here, and I hope I can keep you awake until the end. Okay, and then this one. I will start with my theoretical background, and it's nice it's been mentioned today earlier a couple of times already, and I hope it's clear enough. This my very short introduction to what is posthumanism. How do I introduce it? Some others might introduce it in a different way, but I like to think that there are 2 different main, let's say, strands of posthumanism that can be both seen and called as posthumanism, but they are actually quite opposite. So I want to start from here just to for someone who doesn't know posthumanism, and they may encounter it in very quite opposite places, and to understand this situation. And to be clear, I'm more on the more than human strand of posthumanism, but I will start with the first one. And I see it as that there's these 2 strands. The other talks about going beyond humans, and the second one is weaving humans together with non-human life and talking about more than human living. No, sorry, let's go back. The transhumanism can reach even to the side of anti-humanism. It's about reaching beyond humans and our humanness, going beyond human boundaries to space, or expanding human capabilities with technology, or even leaving humanity behind, evolution to superior artificial intelligence or detached minds, these kinds of ideas, detaching from human limitations, detaching from biological life, from our bodily capabilities. And here humans are thought as special, and for example, the only species on Earth that can do all this. And it's quite a familiar viewpoint in science fiction, for example. And but the other almost opposite conception of posthumanism, where I connect to more in my research, is to recognize and take seriously and even celebrate our connection, our ultimate connectedness to other kinds of life. And this kind of thinking accepts and works with our inseparable interconnectedness with non-humans. And often in this research, the adjective more than human is used, more than human cities or more than human planning, and so on. But different from this other branch of posthumanism, the transhumanism, the connections to our bodies, our connections to other beings, to our biology, to our home planets. They are not problems. We are deeply interconnected to these. They are so deeply part of us that we are not. It's not possible to separate us from them, to separate humans from non-human life. And even, for example, we talk about. Juho talks about rural life and cities, but there's even research on space travel, going even further away from the microbiome, and humans start to suffer without these small companions. So this was a short introduction to posthumanism, how I like to introduce it. And then I wanted to talk shortly about the word wild or wilder, because it was at the title of today, to think about shortly what do we mean by it, because wilderness is usually thought about that it's about a space, a place being free of humans. Is the opposite of civilization and city. It's maybe protected and wild. In some countries this word means that it's a protected area. So then what do we mean by wilder cities? Do we mean that there's less humans, or is there more space for non-humans? Is there less human control and more diversity maybe? Or is it also more dangerous, because wilderness can also be seen as a dangerous place for humans? But I still like the concept of wilder cities, but it's nice to just to think about the words every time we use them. Anyway, then to go to the topic of more than human cities. Today I'm using these comics by Joshua Barkman. I like them. He often has urban animals in them, but not only urban inhabitants. And in the comic we see sparrows nesting in these small title letters. And my starting point is that we already live in more than human cities in many different ways. The more than humans are inside us, and we need them for many ecosystem services and food and so on. And non-humans also adjusting their lives to live with us, as we see in the comic, for example, and of all the life that we have in the city. And so it's not, cities are not without other kinds of life. It's already here. And we are adjusting our lives and practices with non-humans. And today I ask and try to answer to two questions. How do we live together in these more than human cities, and how could we live better together? And so how do we live together? In the comic there's a house spider living with us, saying that when it rains they enter human houses. So they are already adjusting their lives to live with us. They move, they build nests, they burrow, they destroy our cables, they can escape and encroach, they grow, they make noise, they disturb us, they eat, they live their lives in ways that sometimes we don't notice them, sometimes we like them, and sometimes they can disturb us or even be dangerous to us. And we are adjusting already our lives and practices with non-humans in many different ways. We try to plan where to put trees and nature and parks and houses. We designate conservation areas. We do biodiversity offsetting. We manage our gardens, we manage our parks, we manage the animals in the city, especially if they start to be disturbing for us. And all this means that conflicts are quite commonplace they can be bigger or small. They don't always make the headlines in the newspapers, although sometimes they do that too. But they are also very everyday conflicts between humans. Can we disagree about where to plant the trees, for example, or should we kill the snails in the garden, or what to do with the wolf entering a urban area, or the elk, or anything like that. Or they can be conflict between humans and non-humans when we disagree with what the non-humans do, or the non-humans disagree with us. And of course, the rest of the life live together in conflict, but also, of course, collaboration. But anyway, it's not possible to avoid these constant conflicts. But these disagreements are not only a bad thing, especially if you think about conflicts that are voiced out and go to the newspapers or other kinds of public discussion. They indicate interest. There's how would we otherwise know about problems to solve and to build collaboration and new connections maybe, and needing to learn and understand the others, and how to solve the problems and learn something new. And now what I hinted in the morning about negotiation. By negotiation, I don't mean only verbal negotiation. I mean a lot of things. Well, anyway, about the comic, there's a longer time scale. There's a bear living in the forest, and the forest gets cut down, and they build a shopping mall, and a woman gets scared of the bear. So who is encroaching whose territory here? And negotiation is inevitable, and it happens in many levels and in many different practices. This adjustment and negotiation, it's big and small. It's from gardening in private yards, thinking about, do I kill these snails in my garden? How do I kill them? And do I feed the birds, and how do I feed the birds, and how long do I feed the birds, and which birds do I want in my yard? These kinds of very everyday things to negotiate, who we invite and who we push away from the garden, to the scale of land use planning and even bigger things like legislation. Where do we build the shopping malls, and what gets pushed away on the place where the shopping mall is getting built? And I think it's important to understand that this negotiation is we will never be in control. We will never be absolutely sure what will happen tomorrow or next week or next year, because we live in this more than human city with many different kinds of inhabitants who can do new things or have these invasive species that do things that we didn't expect. This more than human cities, it will always be surprising, and to have surprises, it doesn't mean that there's been a failure. It means that you have noticed something, learned something new, and then you, of course, need to understand what to do about it if it's a problem to solve. And thinking of it as a negotiation means also that to think that humans are never in full control of the situation, and I think we should accept that and start from that starting point. And then I will shortly talk about the difficulties of more than human living. Some non-humans can be seen as difficult or irritating, and they can be even dangerous or risky or unpleasant to live with. But this categorization is very situational, relational, case-specific. For example, rats, when they are pets, they are not irritating for the pet owner. And when the capybaras live in their right place, which we think is their right place, we like them. And these categorizations, they don't only depend on how to say, neutral, objective analysis of the actual risks, but there's a lot of attitudes and history and culture to how we see different animals, and of course in what quantities they come and how do they behave, and are they something that we encounter often, or are they something new and perhaps scary in that way. And in the Helsinki Urban Rats project with others, and especially with Virpi Valtonen, we study how urban rat management happens. There is a picture of a rat in Tampere. We got some help from Touko Berry to take such photos. And we study who takes part of urban rat management, what kind of decisions are made, and how do we negotiate the city with rats. And it's interesting to study some animal that has been managed for decades and centuries in cities, and how it's quite deeply embedded in many our practices, so much that many things that we do, we don't maybe even notice that we do them, perhaps because of rats putting trash in trash bins and so on. And briefly about the other pictures too. So I mentioned the capybaras. I don't know if you noticed in Argentina, it happened this year that the capybaras, these big rodents that we often see in cute internet videos too, they encroached the rich gated community. And but this neighborhood was built in the wetlands of the Paraná, the second most important river in South America after the Amazon. And so the capybaras came back, maybe, or how to say that. And the residents' reaction seems to have ranged from feeding them to wanting to shoot them. So a lot of surprises can happen, and these are the points of negotiation that we need to then understand. We need to do something about them, and many things affect that. And the snails, they are often difficult companions in our gardens, and sometimes gardeners need to decide if they want to start killing them or managing them and stopping them, and how. And but in one gardening Facebook group this summer, I saw a novel idea that someone suggested that rats eat the snails. So maybe it's not such a bad idea to have rats in your garden if you have a lot of snails there. But to be sure, this is not an official research recommendation from us, from our group. And I got interested in urban rats, not only to continue to study urban rodents after flying squirrels, but also to contribute to theory, because sometimes using the more than human theory leads to recommending just living happily together. But living together is not always, or maybe not even most times, easy in practice. And I think we need to study also the difficult parts of living together to understand how to live better together, even though it's difficult. And we need to ask how much or how often and what can we tolerate, who has to tolerate and who doesn't. Do the rich people have to tolerate the capybaras, or do the poor people have to tolerate rats? And like this morning, Gandhi showed the poster in Paris that some people are advocating to not kill rats, for example. And so what do we do when we don't want to tolerate something? How do we stop them or kill these other species in the urban space, or can we learn new ways to share spaces some ways? And of course, there's a lot of practices of physical distancing and separation. We kill them, we tap the holes and try to put fences, or even hope that the animals like flying squirrels stay in conservation areas, for example, even though they don't see our plans. And but a lot of it involves also disciplining and educating the humans of what to do, not to feed birds in certain ways, or maybe not at all, not to feed rats with food waste, and how to do in private gardens, what kind of plants are you allowed to have your private garden. So there it's there's a lot of human management that gets done in managing the more than human city, managing the human behavior. And for example, in the urban rat management, it's mostly human management, how to get humans behave in a way that provides less food for rats to eat, to not litter, to put trash in right places, and so on, because the rats are intelligent animals, and they always are ready to exploit even the smallest errors that we do. And this means that managing such small scale practices of humans, practices that are easy to forget when you are busy or tired or, for example, drunk, it's a continuous and never-ending effort to try to make people to do the right things in these small things that maybe they don't seem to matter when you do it yourself, but then the 10 others do it, and then there's suddenly a continuous food for the rat in that place. But also this is part of living together better in a more than human city, and to think about non-lethal ways of living together, and learning to live together in many different ways, which we are already doing, but maybe we should think about more of these ways. Yes, and to move on to how to live better together, we do need more wilder, diverse cities, and there are a lot of things that we can do to achieve this. And I think first what we need to do is to acknowledge that cities are and have never been only human, to paraphrase Bruno Latour. And in the comic there are two raccoons, common mischievous urban non-human residents in North America. They are wondering about the extent of the city. They don't have any other home to go to. They are not in the wrong place where they are living in the city with us, just like rats. And another general thought that I hope we could remember, despite my examples of difficult urban residents, is to try to work with and not against non-human nature. And the next slide, I will have some more concrete examples about what we could do. I have outlined here 3 broad ways how to live better together. Some of them are certainly overlapping, and but I will go soon provide some more details, but I have distinguished these because they have different processes, different rhythms, different mechanics. And with the first, I think, yeah, I will show them. I think we need to actively restore wild urban places, do things specifically for the non-humans, for the other species, leave space for them, and even plan specifically for a modern human city. And I think at the moment we still plan mainly for humans. We plan the nature also for humans, so that provides most services for them. But I think we should try to change that also, to plan. We often see non-humans as obstacles or extras or providing services for us, but I think we should see them also as urban residents. And then the second, we already do a lot of things, a lot of changes and processes in urban space, where we could easily, maybe even in a cheap and easy way, to incorporate non-human needs, and it would benefit numerous other needs too, not only non-human, such as stormwater management or providing shade or things like that. And I think this shift is already happening. We have a lot of new ideas, like, for example, in the morning, Elisa Lähde provided examples of these things. When we have lawns, maybe we could do them to put them to meadows and manage the stormwater in a different way, because we are anyway managing it. Why not doing it in a more than human way, let's say? But I think there's an urgent need to stop doing, well, not stop, but not to stop only doing at pilot projects, but we need to mainstream all these solutions, and green roofs, green walls, urban gardens, all these dead wood and meadows, and all these practical solutions. And then I think the third, we shouldn't forget that we shouldn't let the right hand destroy what the left hand has been building or developing. There are certain practices that actively destroy non-human diversity, and we should move to stop those practices. These include also bigger changes, such as what I mentioned in the morning, changing the consumption and production patterns in the cities, but also easier things like having less managed lawns and tidying up bushes because someone calls into the city and complains about that they don't see the lake because there are bushes in front of it. And then in my last slide, I suggest some values or skills that we need to live better together. They are not anything new, but they are somehow, I see, they are a step away from the technocratic, controlling and human-centered view to planning and managing a city. And yeah, if we could have more of this in our thinking and urban management. And sensitivity is twice for accident, but maybe that's not so bad. Okay, thank you. I didn't see any time.
No, we're pretty spot on time, aren't we? 2 minutes left, I think, even, wasn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So everybody's been great on time. Same routine. Any questions from the audience? Comments as well? Nothing online, I think, or is there?
We have a participant who want to talk here. Is Juho Happinen. Please, you can unmute yourself and provide your comment or question.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the great talk again. I was interested of the use of space that we humans do, because that's the kind of big issue that is now enhanced. And I just did some counting while you were talking, and I counted that, I don't know if this is right, but for every Finnish individual, there's a 1,500 square meters of traffic area, roads and parking lots and stuff. So this is kind of interesting, that how much one person, people need space for the, and then we can count the housing and stuff that will add some 500 square meters above that. So if each of us uses 2,000 square meters of space in the Finland, so there's, you can see, quite interesting situation. Just a thought. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. And maybe we should try to produce less pavement per person, hopefully in the future.
Dalia? Thank you for that question, by the way. Was it Juho who asked the question? Yeah, thank you, Juho, for the comment as well, adding to it.
Yeah, I don't have a formulated question, but at the end of things, it is also a political question. And I wonder if you can comment on that, because again, of course, this doesn't produce any money, and that's always at odds, right?
Yeah, of course, as a policy scientist, it's a political question, but yeah, I also have to hope that we would somehow start realizing how much it costs not to do anything and let everything destroy our health and well-being and everything. So yeah, there's a lot of processes ongoing, maybe to a right direction, but is the speed fast enough? That I'm a bit skeptical, but let's hope.
Yeah, so how do we in a way more holistically cost things or value things, right? So it's the co-benefits, the societal value that we don't necessarily capture. And that is very hard to actually capture, and they're imperfect models that, you know.
Yes, and it's a good point, but I think also the direction of going to the direction of trying to count everything in euros is not right. Trying to count the price for everything, it's about buying into the logic of the market, which is not the right one, even though I'm sure it helps in some discussions, but we shouldn't go too deep in that side either, in my opinion.
But as we saw, well, or some of us saw earlier in the workshops, value has these different meanings, not always the euro signs, but how do we then value? How do we compare and offset? And this is also a big issue, not just, I think, in greening cities and biodiversity and non-human, but in general in sustainable architecture. The bigger question we have, what is the cost of not doing it? And again, cost doesn't have to be in euros, it could be those societal costs, those kind of well-being costs, or, you know, other kind of aspects to it as well. And I am no expert in that at all. I wonder, Johanna, sorry if I put you on the spot, because I know that you and your team, I'm just really making use of having another professor here who works actually in this area with her and her team. If you had any thoughts to share, either about Nina's talk or anything from today. We have a microphone for you, yeah, on the other side, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Johanna. And I'm sorry, my apologies for calling you out in the audience.
No, it's been, I've been thinking this really carefully, and I think the presentation has been just wonderful. Related to the value creation, I think it's really important that we understand that it's not just, we need to reconsider who gets to decide the value and what is valuable. So, well, I'm used to think in stakeholder terms, and I'm always saying that it's the stakeholders themselves who can decide what is valuable for them. So it's not just like the decision makers or the politicians or the whatever, but it is the community who can, and the stakeholders there who can decide what is valuable. And then I wanted to come back also to the aesthetic thing, ethics versus aesthetics, because I think about the aesthetic thing is not just about what we see and what is beautiful and things like that, but it's also about how we know about things. And I think it's about this kind of a maybe bodily understanding of knowing things, so we can hug the trees and understand something more maybe about why they are there. And I think that is important, that we bring in maybe then different kind of epistemological understandings, which I think this kind of aesthetic thinking represents in a way also.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, Laura and Juho had to leave to the next meeting, but I wonder if you maybe want to say something related to your work and the aesthetics, or maybe aesthetics is also like the perception, right, to other people and what we're used to, and the expectations of what spaces or you look like and how we negotiate these spaces with others.
Yes, it's a good question, because in some ways aesthetics can be seen as the soft side, but on the other hand, we have planned very direct lines and very controlled parks for our aesthetic, some to fulfill some aesthetic vision. So yes, we hopefully are in the coming to a new era where we can appreciate the chaos and the spontaneity in nature also.
Yeah, thank you. It actually reminds me of when I was working with stakeholders as an architect in London for social housing. We had proposed roof gardens, green roofs, and when we did the workshop, we actually traveled also to Amsterdam and Rotterdam with them to look at kind of projects and stuff with the resident steering group. And when we worked with the resident steering group, who represented then different people in the community, about these green roofs, and I ended up presenting saying, and he supports biodiversity. And suddenly I opened a can of worms because for some people who'd always lived in concrete tower blocks, it meant spiders, it meant wasps, it meant bugs they didn't quite like. And it was actually somebody else and I was really taken aback. Oh God, what have I just done? Because it's not the values for them. They like the idea of flower meadows and the butterflies and the kind of sort of the more attractive species, as you referred to earlier as well. It depends on the context where they take place. But it actually took one of their own community to say, okay, actually, hang on a minute, guys. Like, we've been living in our flats like this, but we walk across the road, we have spiders and bugs, and what is the problem really? Is it really a problem that suddenly it is actually at our balcony and so on? And they did end up choosing for their green roofs and so on. But it also shows you how how much we can learn from the values as well from the local stakeholders, as you, I think, rightly pointed out, that who determines the values. And at the moment, it seems that it is not driven by the bottom up and by the people who actually have to then live in these situations. It tends to be the reverse as well. So yeah, so thank you, Johanna, despite putting you on the spot. Yeah, sorry. But I think if there's no further questions also online or here, I just want to pause in case that there is anything. I know it's been a long day for the 20 or so of you that are still here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I mean, this is both, of course, a wrap up of the Architects Climate Action Network, our second to last talk under the Everything Needs to Change banner. Thank you so much, Nina, for your talk, but also for co-chairing this with you and for jumping in when we'd already started to think about what this could look like when you joined the team. I know Ilona's already had to leave back to Helsinki, but thank you, Ilona, for the workshopping and all the other tasks. To Lily and Antero, who've been the roaming mic people during questions. Then, of course, to Raul, who's behind the scenes online, and Tutti, who's had the last minute also jumped in for timekeeping and all the technical issues. And really, this would not be possible as well without Alyssa, who could not be here today, but who has organized and literally timed everything and helped us with this. That's why I think it's run so smooth. And of course, G-Live Lab Tampere. Thank you guys for such an awesome job. So, but that's it from us then. And I hope that we somehow can stay in touch and we can continue this discussion related to research, our teaching, but also outreach to our places in the city and our own communities as well, and working with stakeholders. But that's it from us, I think.
Yeah.
You want to say some closing words? Go on.
Well, I can say that take a poster from there. It's my previous project. It's for free.
Okay, so actually on the table over there.
On the table, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a poster you can take. As you were saying. And then, of course, you also have details on the tables if you did want to join on the newsletter for Stue. We have the Aging City Symposium. And it is, I think, if I don't get the dates wrong, is it the 15th and the 16th of December? If that's a Thursday and Friday. Yes, somebody's nodding. I got the right information. So we don't have the details exactly yet, but it'll be a similar event, but over more an afternoon and a morning the next day. But that's it from us. So yes, thank you, everybody. Yeah. Yes, another announcement, I think. Yes.
Yes, definitely. I want to invite you all. Next week, there will be a circular economy symposium at university. It's 11th. Yes, 11th
Thursday?
of 11th, Thursday. Yeah. And if you want to join, just come and say to me, so I will send you an invitation. It's also openly announced in the university webpage. So it's a symposium on the circular economic catalyst project that I'm part of, and I think it might be interesting for some of you. So
And is
you
it
are all
live or is it also online?
both, and
Okay, so could we, and it also can be for people outside the university? too?
definitely it's open to everybody, and we have some great presentations, and then we have a panel, and we have an art exhibition, and we have poster show, and it's at the university. So welcome all, and free
Sounds like we
free
have to be there.
networking event
Yeah.
afterwards.
Well, thank you so much for that announcement. What we'll do for those that are online, we will follow up with those of you that signed up and send a message out with the details, which I'll get from Johanna as well, so you can sign up. But that's then it on that note. Good evening, everyone. Thank you.